is a fantastic person to discuss those challenges and opportunities with. We are joined today by 𝙴𝚙𝚙𝚎, who has worked for years as an analyst in two of the leading analyst research firms in the world, Gartner and Forrester. Prior to that, she worked as a digital innovation leader at Sephora and has a wide range of experience innovating in marketing in large organizations. She's seen a lot, she's done a lot, and she is one of the world's best at synthesizing what the leading edge of enterprise marketing innovation is doing now. So it's a real treat. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me and for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. I was so excited when we had a conversation, and it turned out that we had an opportunity to have you as a guest here on the Coffee Club today. So there are a few big picture topics that we want to discuss. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on them. But I want to start with a question about the nitty gritty about let's begin with the real tangible side of marketing innovation. So many of us want to do exciting new things. We want to be part of learning organizations. We want to do a lot of experiments, but we need to make sure to organize things effectively. We need to budget. We need to put our teams together in ways that will really support that. That's something that you have studied a lot of. What can you tell us about your thinking these days about setting up an organization for innovation?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different models that we can get into, but the number one thing very quickly that I figured out when I was advising our clients when we were building out that practice was that everybody's definition of innovation was different. And so, innovation could be, constantly updating or altering an existing thing. One person said digital transformation in their organization was going from catalog to digital for the first time, going through email. So when I started having these questions, I finally started them by having them tell me what they meant by innovation. And from there, you can get more perspective into how risk averse they are, which most people are. They say they want to be doing these things and they actually think that they're doing these things, but they're really not. And so what I always like to do is start with an assessment of what, or if you're in the banking industry, you're probably not going to be, the most innovative thing in the world because you're highly regulated, right? And there's certain hurdles that you have to jump through, and you're conservative, so you have to do something that's more proven, so you're a fast follower. So you kind of need to gauge the willingness of the organization to be truly innovative. With Sephora, that was first to market, first to beauty for anything. And so that was their ethos. And so you have an organization like that, and then you have a much more conservative organization. And so first you really have to understand, what is your willingness to actually innovate? How can your culture enable you to take these types of challenges and risks? And from there, of course, it becomes a funding thing. So do I have to have funding for full-time headcount? Do I want to really invest heavily to build my own internal team? Do I want to make my agency responsible for identifying trends every quarter and bringing their ideas to us and completely outsource it? And so there's a lot of different ways that people are quote unquote building these types of teams. It was either all in, a hybrid, or an outsource is kind of what it boiled down to at the end of the day. Where it got really hairy was the budgeting. And this is one of the things that I used to talk about with CMOs all the time. If it becomes something that you have to build a case for and you pitch it to the chief product officer, and then they say, but I need you guys to pay for it from your budget because your organization hasn't put money aside for testing or learning or doing anything, you're basically walking around with a hat asking people for money and stuff never gets done. So you have to have budget set aside for innovation, and you have to protect those dollars like they're your own children. Because people are going to want to put their hand in the bag and start, taking some of those away. So you need your own fund. You can't, you can't get into this cycle of business case pitching and asking for money. You really need to set it aside in order to invest, move quickly, have process. And it's not just a painful struggle. It's an investment, much like any other marketing channel. And so we tracked that over time while I was at Gartner. And at first we were around 10% of the budget, climbing all the way up to 12. And I think we were flat this year, just, it's COVID. So a lot of stuff went down, a lot of stuff went up, but that stayed flat, which I thought was great, because that kind of brings me to all the conversations I would have with those risk averse companies before COVID about innovation. They're like, oh yeah, we know it's important, everybody's doing it. And then a lot of those clients I've watched been completely flat-footed, not able to pivot, which everybody's had to virtually pivot everything, move quickly, know where to go, have the right resources or the cash in order to do these things, while they're also trying to, do zero budgeting and cost analysis and what have you. And so it's even more important to me, despite everybody being very unsure of what's going on, that the investment and the resources and the time and the process is what's going to serve you during times like these. Hopefully they will never happen, but I think people are realizing that innovation is not this word, it's a real thing that you absolutely need within your organization, because a lot of people are finding out right now that they don't have that in tune, and they're getting hurt pretty badly.
So am I understanding correctly that you found that the average enterprise was setting aside 12% of their marketing budget?
Yes.
For innovation?
Yes, and we also drilled down into those numbers, and it was actually the SMBs that would invest more than the larger organizations, and they cited that they had the most of return on their investment, which we thought was really interesting. So here you have these small companies willing to take big bets, and they're seeing them pay off. And so that goes back to culture. I mean, it's just when you have these large dinosaur institutions, they're so risk averse, and then you have these tiny organizations that are just willing to try anything and take big bets. So it's hard to get a big bet written off, when you have 20 stakeholders you have to get approved by when you're at a very large corporate company. So
So presumably those investments are paying off all year round, and then they're paying off in the form of flexibility and ability to pivot quickly in the event of a crisis like we're seeing now.
Well, I mean, I think I'm not saying if you build a team, you'll be able to weather a crisis, but you will have the processes and the resources and the thinking in place to probably move a lot faster, and even have some things in your back pocket ready to go that makes even more sense now given the market. So yes, absolutely.
But it's necessary, not sufficient.
It's necessary to what? Have people
to invest ahead of time. It's really, I think I follow what you're saying. That sounds like really that's really good advice. So let's talk about the vision for that innovation. Yeah. So let's say we've bought into and begun investing in an innovation function consistently for marketing. And how do we best move beyond saying we're doing it because everyone's doing it, or we feel some sort of obligation, or how do we really set our sights looking up and out into the future as an organization, and build a future looking vision?
It has a lot to do with culture. So the very beginning of the process is really stakeholder alignment across the organization of that we want to have leadership that is reinforcing innovation, that's allowing our employees to participate in specific programs. So there's a lot of culture initiatives to kind of get people, because you can't just like flip the light back on and be like, hey, we're innovative now. I mean, there's a lot of, ways in which you need to empower and help, kind of nourish your employees, who, by the way, have the best ideas for your products because they're working with them all day. So I always used to say at Sephora, when we would do all of these different hackathons and whatever, like the best ideas came from the guy that's in charge of real estate, for the stores. And it's because he's thinking about one thing all day. And so the opportunity for him to think across the business was like so exciting. And he would come up with these amazing ideas. And so you really don't know. There's so much wealth right under your own hood. So it's a cultural thing. It's an alignment at the top, at the stakeholders. And then it begins with a very, what's the right word? An assessment that I would say, please have done by an objective third party. Because if you try to assess your own culture and your own marketing vision internally, you seem to either, one, think that you're doing a lot better than you really are. You tend to actually assess yourself higher scoring wise versus where you actually sit, against your competition or other people in other industries. And so there's kind of this hard assessment that's done where you really understand where you sit against, and you can do it against your own industry, company size, whatever. And from there, it's really clear where you kind of need to start closing the gaps, or, is it, wow, we really need more product people because we need to be faster, or I'm making this up. And from there, it's really understanding, okay, 3 years from now, what do we want this company to be, right? And maybe it's just a refresh of a vision that you've already had, but things are changing so rapidly that people need to be doing these on an ongoing basis, and making sure that it's very clear that there is this North Star that everyone's aligned to, that everybody in the organization, if they were asked, hey, what is our mission here? What is our game plan? What's the vision for this organization moving forward? Everybody has the same answer to that question. And so then you start to kind of plot out over the course of time what are the tools you need and the technologies that you need, and then what are the teams that you need to build, and what are the skill sets that are required to do all of these things, and how do we address those types of things. So it becomes this is pretty long project. I always called it, when I did these projects with clients, I called it homework. I was like, okay, now do these 3 slides, and then let's get back on the phone. And it would take, months and months and months, but I would literally do their homework with them and get them to do their vision work. And we would create these incredible things. It was really valuable and rewarding, I would say.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. So let me see if I can restate the model and make sure that we're on the same page. So there's a process of continuous cultural development to build excitement and make sure that the culture supports innovation. And then there's executive alignment, making sure that the executive team is aligned to support a culture of innovation as well. And then in order to know that those things are strong enough, you need to bring in an outside objective third party to do an assessment to determine whether you're there yet, or whether you need to make different investments in those first 2 steps. But then once things get solid enough, you can identify the clear North Star, make sure everyone is on the same page about that North Star, and then do months of work to figure out all the steps and all the investments that you'll need to take to get there towards that North Star.
Yeah, and I think one of the key pieces about the culture is that I learned this at Sephora. When we launched our team, nobody knew what we were doing, and what our jobs were. And then finally we started getting some projects, and we would throw it over the wall to the IT and the product team, and they're like, our roadmap's full for like 3 years. Like, when, on what planet do you want me to do this work? And by the way, who are you and what team are you on? So we quickly found out that we needed to engage the entire culture to, 1, understand why it was valuable, 2, have them be part of it, and 3, not be this like skunk works team that everybody didn't like or want to help because we were closed off in some office somewhere. So it was a huge learning and a huge big pedal back. I mean, I kind of, half of my job almost was around culture initiatives when I thought 100% of my job was going to be all tech initiatives. So,
Mm.
I mean, it was a huge change, of course, but in time, I mean, we had incredible mentoring programs. We had incredible speakers that would come, incredible events. We executed on things that came on out of hackathons. And we really started to see the momentum pick up after we were making those key investments. And we worked really closely with HR too to help us with that. And they were very, very supportive. So
With HR helped put on cultural events to build a culture of innovation.
well, we would work with it. Well, we would suggest something that we thought, we want to have a speaker series. That's great. Can you help us promote this? This is who we're thinking about. We just engage them for their feedback and their willingness to help if possible, instead of just going on and throwing an employee event without HR knowing. So we really wanted to have them at the table and hear their ideas, and they were very willing to participate. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this cross-team collaboration, bringing in the product org from the very beginning of the innovation process, making sure to have visibility and collaboration with HR seems to point in the direction of some of the conversations that you've been having around the creation of a blueprint for an agile organization. Are these the sorts of steps that you are referring to in that? Or what does that mean to put together a blueprint for an agile organization?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And really they're very, the answer is different than the answers I was giving you on the other thing. So when you're talking about an agile organization, probably one of the first things that's going to come to mind is data, right? It's continuous improvement, used by data, blah, blah, blah. So yes, that's definitely part of the process. But for me, when I used to talk to CMOs that would come to me and say, okay, I need a more agile marketing organization. And this is one of those instances, again, where I said, what is an agile organization in your definition, right? Because everybody has a different definition. And so for me, it was always at the top of leadership. And I actually think, Marshall, we've talked about this before. There are certain leadership skills that must exist for an agile marketer and leader versus a more traditional marketing leader. They need to really hone soft skills. They need to distribute their authority throughout the organization and empower people to make their own decisions. They can't micromanage. They should be using marketing dashboards and keeping, eyes on everything, but they should not be micromanaging this team that should be empowered and knows the course that they're heading towards. They know what they're doing. They hired their smart people. And that's a really different type of leader. I mean, I've been in marketing for 20 years. I've definitely not had that type of leader before. You can't, if you want to move quickly, if you want to iterate, you can't have 7 people having to sign off on something in order to move something forward. You just have to break down all that bureaucracy and red tape, and it can make people feel really uncomfortable. And things will go wrong, and that's fine. But if you have the right leader that's hiring the right people, that is employing the most the right technology. So I talk a lot about work management systems, and I'm assuming, I don't know this, but I'm assuming they've sold a lot of them, SaaS ones during COVID because everybody's working remote. But the work management platform. So you also need the technology to empower them to move more quickly, right? They need the access to the data. They need the platforms to help them manage all of these things that are going on at all these different times. But then they also have to have these things that are able to bubble up to the leadership where they're able to be in the know, but they're not breathing down your neck.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's always the Netflix example that I give. Netflix is like all directors. It's like the flattest organization in the entire world, and everybody is wicked smart, and they are empowered to do what's best in their opinion for the organization, and they move fast as hell. So it's just part of their culture, and they do it really well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, specific stories like that are so inspiring, and it's great to hear a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes there too for such a ubiquitous brand. And
Yeah,
may we all aspire to be so fast and so
I know.
so
They
innovative.
truly did something. I mean, I think she wrote a book. I mean, have you seen the deck from their HR deck that's
Mm-hmm.
gone around, kind of viral? I mean, they've just, from the very beginning, you know, they really kind of defined that vision and that culture. And much like Salesforce, you know, it's all about trust and building trust in their customers, and doing the right thing. And from day one, they've built their business that way. And so you have these companies that set themselves up for success early on, and you see them be successful. And it's in part because of all of these values that they place and that they really live. And we're talking about brand purpose now more than ever. What does brand stand up for? You know, however many calls my friends at Gartner are getting about what should we say about Black Lives Matters, or should we get in this conversation? I mean, you should know exactly where you know, this is the type of work that brands are overlooking, that they need to be thinking a lot more about. And we're seeing a lot of work being done around that right now. So you have like the Patagonia example, right? Then you have the people that are really willing to plant the flagpole in the sand, you know, like Mark Benioff and the Indiana thing, and, you know, like really standing up for change. And then you have kind of these opportunistic brands that come off super unauthentic. And then we saw the massive rise of DTC because people were giving back to charities and causes when you purchase the products. And so it's just it's really changing the way that brands are thinking about their purpose and their values and how they truly embody those as an organization.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so glad that that is what it looks like to you. It's what it looks like to me as well. But getting to hear about the way that that is operationalized is really, really helpful. And the view that you have had over so many different firms and what's worked and what hasn't is great to hear about.
Yeah, I think this isn't a question you asked me, but I think something that I was really focusing on before I left that I loved, and it was becoming more and more apparent to me as I was having conversations, is that people have shifted from trying to figure out innovation on their own, and they're building these ecosystems. And so they would start with a consumer insight, and then they would bring in, so like Coke has a consumer insight, they bring in their agency, they bring in Google, they bring in Microsoft, they bring in, you know, 2 AI startups, whatever. Everybody's in the sandbox together, and you're kind of wondering, well, why would people want to spend a day in the sandbox with, well, they came up with something that was really, really cool that they built, and now Microsoft is going to white label that, and that's become a new product for them. So it's like, people are suddenly, instead of seeing it as competitive, they know that they can't do it alone and they need to do it faster. And so they're creating these really strategic partner ecosystems that are super interesting.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, we may want to ask you to come back on the show and talk about that sometime. That
I love that topic.
that's really inspiring. Oh, fantastic. Well, Elizabeth, I am going to share. We'll post a link to that famous Netflix HR deck that you mentioned in notes. Anyone who hasn't seen that, that is a great inspiration. What's the best way for folks to connect with you on an ongoing basis and learn more from your work?
So I am a power user on LinkedIn. So that is probably the fastest way to get to me. My husband actually jokes that he probably could get to me faster through LinkedIn than text messaging to me. So please do look for me on LinkedIn, and I contribute a lot. I write some stuff, and so you'll see me on there. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Well, folks, this has been a conversation with Elizabeth Shaw. Elizabeth has worked as a digital innovation leader at Sephora. She has been a leading thinker and analyst at both Gartner and Forrester. Today, she is working as a consultant with a variety of different firms. And wow, is it good fortune for us today to get to hear about some of your learnings and observations over the years.
It's really fun. Yeah, I love
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Yeah, really passionate about it. So thanks for having me.
You bet. All right. Well, have a great rest of the afternoon, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Sprinklr Coffee Club. Join us next time. And please do connect with Elizabeth over on LinkedIn, as well as with Sprinklr on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you may be. And we will see you next time.
Excellent. Bye, everyone.